Hi, I'm so glad you guys have made it to the 1 in 36 Mixed Virtual Autism Summit. We are doing this session pre-recorded just a couple days prior. So we're so happy to have our next guest, Lauren, with us today. And I stalked Lauren on her TikTok channel and found her on Instagram, I think, after that, and just some really unique special messages that I felt like this is someone who is really helping thousands of people and really making an impact. And I know that it probably doesn't seem like that because I think like when you're in it, you just don't realize how much you can be making so many changes. But really, I'm sure that all of your listeners and viewers and followers are so, so grateful for the vulnerability, the authenticity, and just the realness that you bring to your channel and sharing with others. So, give us a little introduction of what brought you here today.
Well, thank you so much. That's so nice. Okay, what brought me here? Well, I was a teacher for 5 years, teaching math and vibing in the education system. And I had previously been diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 14. And as I was navigating that, I kept finding myself questioning, like, what rules do we have to follow? I don't understand what rules are real and what ones are fake. And in asking that question multiple times, it prompted some realizations that this isn't something that everybody is asking themselves. Some people just know what the rules are. And then I found myself on autism TikTok and connecting with a lot of things that people were saying. And that started my autism journey and the process of getting diagnosed. And now I create videos talking about just my experience living with autism and ADHD and chronic PTSD and what that all looks like. And I'm kind of nicheless, as I feel like a lot of neurodivergent people are, but I just really share every aspect of my life and like the things that I'm processing and thinking about and the way that being autistic and ADHD impacts those in my everyday life, because it's a huge part of my identity.
Absolutely. And thank you for doing that too, because I love this medium where I can interview people and talk to them and uncover, things. And then I always learn so much for myself about the other person, for my own life and everything else. But it is also wonderful to just be able to know that you can get on there and talk to these people. What it is basically the average age group of your listeners, do you think?
I should know. I should have looked this up ahead of time because I can
I
go
should have told you I was going to ask, but I just came up with it.
that my general demographic is like the 20 to 35 age group, and predominantly women. I think I have like it's like 75-25% or something, but I'm personally non-binary, so it even bothers me that they do it by gender or whatever. But that, I think that's my like general demographic. I have a lot of former teachers or people who are currently teachers that follow me because I talk a lot about why I left the education system and the problems of the US education system from the perspective of someone who is autistic, ADHD, and worked in those systems and saw the failures that they were having for students with the same diagnoses as me, as well as just talking about general problems of the education system and what it's like to be a teacher and how our really crappy working conditions are really crappy learning conditions for children. So that's a huge part of my population. I also, this is not related to autism and ADHD. Well, it kind of is, but a huge other part is I talk about previously being growing up in like very conservative evangelical settings, and then my process of like as I have been deconstructing those has been a huge part of unmasking my autism. And as you go through an unmasking process and you're like questioning yourself a lot about like why do I do these things? Why do I believe these things? Because it shifts your whole frame of reference, right? When you learn something so pivotal about who you are that you didn't know, you start looking back at everything and grieving and all of that hard but good stuff. And that just cemented a lot of those changing of beliefs that I already was on that path, but they're very connected to realizing that I was autistic. So that's a whole other part of my, but it's also is something that I talked about there too. So can't be confined.
Yeah, I love it. No, I like that you said that because I found out when I was 45. So just a couple years ago, I found out that I was autistic as well. And at first, I knew that I was going to the appointment and I was excited and I had shared it in a public group with a global autism project. So a very public global group and shared that I maybe thought that I was autistic and I was going to go have these testings done. And when I found out, my first thought before I had the appointment was, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go and tell everyone afterwards, but
Yeah.
it was actually the opposite. It took me about 5 months to really process the information. And it wasn't anything. I was very proud because I was finally able to kind of see where I fit in my own family of autistics. And so it was special in that way. And that very brought us together in so many ways. But it really, like you said, it took so much time for me to go over all of the childhood things and all of the hearing sensory problems that I had and a lot of other issues. And it was so fascinating to then be like, okay, here months later, okay, I'm ready to share. Guess what, everyone? Here I am again. And it was exciting that it was in the same platform that I was able to also like share the information with that same group of people. And so it was a very circle, it came to fruition. It was really nice that way.
It's so interesting. I feel like in written context, I will not share anything until I have like the fully conceptualized process idea. But it's funny that you said it took you so long because I'm like talking like I've processed everything and I have probably not even processed like 1/10 of it. And that really is a good summation of what my entire channel is like you're just watching me process all these massive existential crises I'm going through on a daily basis about like what it means to be autistic, what it means to have that overlap with other comorbidities, what it's like existing in the United States with that, and also how that overlaps with like LGBTQ identities and stuff like that. But I'm still so in it with processing. And I think the only reason I'm able to share is because it's verbal and I'm a verbal processor. So everyone just gets to watch me word vomit and monologue or
See,
info
now you
dump.
know why I love this girl. And just so to my own heart. Yeah, just it's so easy though when you are able to connect and find those that you can, I mean, even just in the conversation that we've had just today, I've learned so much and I just thank you for that. And it's like I want to preface to everyone attending, today's summit that it's all about learning. It's all about listening and learning to these experiences. And tell us about you what you have going on next, any projects that you're working on or anything like that.
Um, just continuing to post content. There's another conference that I believe that I'm going to be a part of as well. It's like for neurodivergent people and navigating life. So that's something to look out for coming in the future. But yeah, mainly just posting on my channel, trying to survive the thick of burnout while also working a full-time job and being a mother to 3 large dogs and 2 cats. But like no fancy big projects in the works, just my day-to-day posts.
I love that. And tell us what your TikTok channel is called so everyone can go and follow you and check it out.
It's called AuDHD former teacher, which AuDHD is AuDHD, and that's a slang term that's been kind of co-opted on TikTok that is describing the experiences of autistic and ADHD people. So combining those two words together, and former teacher, because I was formerly a teacher.
Yeah. What kind of do you think now you said you did elementary, but then you went into the older groups of kids, right? What are some common misconceptions in your own personal experience, not that you are a teacher expert or expert of psychology or anything. Well, in your own personal experience, what were some things that just really went unnoticed in your classrooms that maybe we could pay more attention to in society?
Oh gosh, there's so many things. Like I would say right now, especially post COVID, mental health crises are a massive thing happening in youth as a whole. And I think especially considering how underdiagnosed still ADHD and autism are within minority populations, I think sharing that information more with not just special education teachers, but gen ed teachers, and helping those teachers better understand and navigate like the special education system and what all of the requirements regarding those things are, because people don't really know that if you're a gen ed teacher, it's not taught to you very well. What IEPs are, what 504s are, all the things. And I know there are people who are going to talk about advocacy here, but I originally started in special education and I did the things to get a certification for it. And then I ended up switching to math education and taught high schoolers after that. And even then I still like struggled sometimes, even after having all of those classes. So I think just offering more PD or professional development to teachers regarding different disorders and just different mental health crises that students can go through, and helping them to understand and overwrite a lot of misconceptions. As a teacher who, like when I was teaching, I knew I had ADHD. I would talk about it frequently, and I would still have teachers in front of me that would say things like, this kid's got ADHD, but he's just lazy. And I'm like, do you know how ADHD works? Because you're showing me you don't know how ADHD works. And the fact that you're saying this to me and you know I have ADHD is like massive red flag. So let's have a conversation about it. There's just like not a lot of opportunities for teachers that have been in it a long time to learn and be updated on these ideas, because we also see it in our healthcare system too, right? Like they're really behind in different representations of autism and what it looks like in different individuals and just how broad the spectrum can be. So I think that would be something that I would hope for, and just listening to kids and taking their word for that they mean it, that not assuming an ulterior motive, because most kids, they're clever, they do things to get in trouble sometimes, but like if you create a space where they can come and tell you exactly how they're feeling and be honest and open with them, they generally are going to respect that, because you're showing that you respect them as a human being and an autonomous living person, not just a child.
Yeah. It's important that we show, and I agree with that 100%, that we give respect to children, because often, in older times or in things, you have to earn my respect, or respect is earned or whatever. Well, if you don't show and offer respect to a child, they have no example of how to give respect back or what to do and how to do that. So I think it's so important that as responsible adults that we do that to children. And we were kind of talking earlier about how to speak to children and older kids and young kids. And it's always been something I kind of tease with my husband that I said, I think if it was like, what is that show Enchanted, where she goes, into the cartoon world from the regular world, I could certainly channel animals to do things for me. I love to sing to animals. I love to sing to children. Like, it's just this funny thing that we joke about. But it's all in the idea that if you want to gain respect and learn them teach them how to also have respect. It comes with being respectful to begin with. And adults have a really hard time with that with children sometimes, especially when they're, in a hurry or in their own heads, and they don't take time to understand that this little person's looking up to you right now, and you could be creating the wrong message if you're not careful.
Is that, God, I always get them mixed up. I think this is the right one. I think the authoritarian perspective of like parenting and teaching versus authoritative of telling, like, I'm the authority, so I told you you need to do this, so you need to just shut up and do it. And that's something that like I never understood as a kid. And so, but obviously because I'm autistic, but I didn't know that as a teacher at the time. And I just always try to do it with students. I always explain their whys, like the whys behind things. I never took them questioning something as them being disrespectful. I always assume you're questioning because you genuinely are confused, or you want to know more, or you want to understand. And knowing for myself that like understanding the why behind something or how it interconnects with other things and relates helps me buy in a lot more to want to learn it and master it fully, especially with things like math. Like the way that standards are structured are not structured in a way that make it really easy for you to bring it back to like real life things, which is ironic considering that's why they're really supposed to be learning it. But I really tried to pull back real life applications so that kids, like when they ask me questions about like, why are we learning this? This seems stupid. Sometimes I would say, yeah, it is. But the man of the Indiana Department of Education says we have to like, it sucks. I know it sucks, but we got to do it. And then we'll like do something fun afterwards. Because as I would teach, they would always ask like random questions, and I would put them to the side, and then we'd Google them all together afterward and do like Google deep dives of just obscure, completely unrelated topics to what we were talking about. But it was like a motivation for us to get through what we needed to get through. And for things where like it did relate, my dog is scratching himself very loudly. For things that I did have real life applications, I tried to always present them and give them examples. And I think it's interesting, we're so literal sometimes in our thinking, and I would see that in kids, or they'd be like, well, I'm not going to write down a math equation when I have this happening. And I'm like, no, but you're doing the algebra in your head, and having done it on paper and seeing it before may help you do it faster in real life. And they generally would be like, okay, like, I appreciate you being honest that this part's stupid and that this part is actually useful. I'm like, yeah, and that's why we're not going to do a bunch of test stuff over the stupid part, because I know you're never going to use it, or you're only going to use it next year in the next math class you're using, or whatever. But honesty was always the best policy with kids. It helps a lot.
And really, it does. And they have an innate sense of understanding when it's not honesty going on. And I wish more people realize that it really, even I, in my own life, remembering, times where it was like, why am I always questioning these things? And then you come to find out years and years later, oh my gosh, I was always questioning them because I had a right to do so the whole time. And it really like gives you validation, anger, and all the emotions, right, that you have to go through then. But I really hope as a generation, as a new era that we're living in and moving into, with so much more information available to us than ever before, we really start to share the more sensitive topics that have been shunned away from society's ears, if you will, and really start to shine a light on things that can be helpful as a whole for society. And that comes with support of those who need it in generations to come, and how to teach people to be aware of that. So that's what we're here doing today, folks.
Right, exactly. And I love what you just said about like, you questioned because you had a right to do so. A huge part of why I didn't stay in education, like if I look at every single problem I had, it all came back to I was asking questions and people didn't like it, so they tried to bully me out. And eventually it was to the point where like I wasn't safe in the circumstances in which I was teaching. And so I chose to leave. And then when I left, which I was telling everyone for 6 months straight, I'm out of here. But when I left, they were like, oh, you actually left. And I'm like, yeah, because I kept my word. Like if I say I'm doing something, it's because I'm doing it. And then at my job now, when I just had a review and I was praised for constantly asking questions because it helps in the context of what we're doing. Like it helps a lot that I ask questions about like changes in patterns and stuff because it's software development and you want to be consistent in those things. And so I think what I try to remind myself of is like I have a right to ask questions and want clarification. If people react negatively to that, I can't control their reactions, but that's a them problem. And I think it's Elise Myers, whom I love deeply, has a quote that says, like, if you think I'm too much, then go find less, but I'm not going to make myself less. And
I love that.
that's kind of what I've been really sticking to lately is like anybody, any workplace, any circumstance where someone makes you feel like you have to be small to be accepted is not a person who's worth caring about what they think. And that's really easier said than done. And in the context of education where kids have to be there, like it's really difficult because they don't have control. Like they don't have the choice to leave a classroom of a teacher who is making them feel small. And so in having those conversations with teachers about the importance of not doing that to kids so that hopefully we stop having this problem where kids don't like get into adulthood and don't think they're allowed to ask questions because of the negative reactions that they're having from teachers, which is something that I constantly am getting comments about from like any kids or and adults. Like anytime I post about teaching, people are like, I would have loved to have you as a teacher because like I asked all the questions and whatever. And it's like it's nice to hear, but it's also heartbreaking because all of those things that you're saying are why I couldn't sustain being a teacher in the current system.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I know it's going to take so much to change the way the system is now. I hope that they can somehow undo themselves and be undone and be redone someday in the future. But I think that chipping away at some of these ideas and supports is better than not.
Yeah. And one thing I really do hope to use my platform for, and that I continue to try to use it for, is I feel like I can affect more change right now from the outside than I can from the inside, because especially in the context of teaching, so many schools now have like anti-social media policies where you can't, if you post anything and the school sees it and takes it as like a context of being negative about the school, you can lose your job. Or if a parent sees it and complains or whatever, which there are valid reasons to complain. You see teachers doing certain things on social media. I'm not trying to say, but like, it's so, there's so much gray area. It's so unclear that there are so many teachers who feel like they can't speak out about the problems until they leave. And I just saw, I think it was the Today Show just posted a whole segment on this where they talked about that in the past year, 300,000 people have left teaching. And in May of 2023 alone, 51,000 people resigned.
No.
And in that piece, they talked about all the reasons why people were leaving. And then it went on to talk about administrators and schools and how they're so unsure of how to solve the problems, but they just listed what all the problems were. But like it's a lot of little problems that, and I know it's hard to tackle them, but what really we need more support. Kids need more support. Teachers need more support. Everybody needs more resources. Obviously, pay is going to be something that is also helpful, but even just like emotional support, real administrative support, the amount of physical work every day that you have to do as a teacher, not even factoring in the pay, is like, I do as much work as I did in one day of teaching in maybe a week in my 40 hours of my corporate job where I get paid $22,000 more. It's just like the general public has no real understanding of just how much is put on their their plates. And I think that that would be one of the first things that really would solve a lot of problems, because when you're in that setting and you have no support, like when I was trying to find IEPs and stuff, I had to actively ask and look for them in 504s. There was no support. And I was in a very wealthy district with a lot of support for teachers and students. So that's like such an easy, tangible way that we can make things easier, is take stuff off their plate so that teachers have time to devote to doing and meeting the legal requirements that some teachers don't even know that they're supposed to be meeting. And that's a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a parent myself, and I really encourage other parents to, if you have the information to share with teachers, like I would love for my teachers, the teachers at my kids' schools, to let me come and do presentations in their class, in their assemblies, and anything to help them, give them any more resources. I'm not sure if you would do that in your area, but it sounds like if there's always advocates you can find. So if you do want to reach out and get resources for your school, or find out if there's somebody who can come to your school and do presentations, let me or Lauren know, and reach out to us and really let us help the school get these resources for your students, for your students' peers. And let's try to make life a little bit easier for both our teachers, which will then make it easier for our students, and ultimately our homes all together.
Totally. And I think another key part of it is like, teaching is a profession where you can't be accommodated for if you're special. I don't want to use the phrase. If you're neurodivergent, if you're disabled in any way, like all teachers I know who have been and have gone through a formal reasonable accommodation request through the ADA, they're either told essentially like it's not possible, or it's not reasonable, or they're given accommodations, but then they're not actually put in place. And it's just very, very similar to situations that I'm sure a lot of parents feel like their kids go through too, who are supposed to have these specialized education plans, and then those accommodations aren't getting put in place. And so I think a huge part of the conversation needs to be like, we need to restructure school to actually be a place that can be accommodating, because the way it's structured now, it's not possible. There is too much being put on each individual teacher and individual student to try to manage. And it's just not, there's just not enough support in any area. And that's a big reason why I had to leave, because I was so deep into autistic burnout, because I was so tired from all of the energy being put into that.
Amazing. Well, I really want to thank you for showing up today and really showing up for your community every way in your content, and helping others to not feel alone, like we had talked about a little bit earlier, and really being able to find your tribe, and understand that the people that you probably get along with the most are probably more like you than they know or So I think that is a really fun, kind of exciting thing to know about your friends. But it's been so nice to get to know you. And before we do go, tell us again what your TikTok channel, and if you have a website or anything, other social medias you want people to go to.
I'm on Threads, but as I'm terrified to post anything in written format, I rarely post, but I'm on there. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, and it's also just spell it out, AuDHD_former teacher on all places.
Oh, it's so nice to get to know you like this, Lauren. And I look forward to staying in touch and having more great conversations and 5-hour long podcasts.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been really great to have you here today. And everybody, thank you for joining us. And we will be right up next. I'm sure that I'm hosting this, so you'll see me live in just a minute. Thanks so much.